MindXMotive. I'm your host, Raya. Now, imagine a man walking through Bangkok's crowded streets, dressed in gold-rimmed glasses and utter nonchalance. To strangers, he's just another tourist. But to the world, he would soon be known as the Serpent, a killer who turned charm into his weapon. Welcome to the case of Charles Sobhraj. I will begin with the start of the end for Charles. On February 6, 1967, Dutch diplomat Herman Nippenburg received a letter about two Dutch backpackers that up and left following the hippie trail. Now, for those of you who don't know what the hippie trail is, let me explain. The hippie trail was a legendary overland route from Western Europe to South Asia, popular from the mid-1950s to the late 1970s, taken by counterculture travelers seeking adventure, cultural immersion, and spiritual enlightenment. The letter that the Dutch diplomat received was from a man in the Netherlands who said he was searching for his missing sister-in-law and her boyfriend. Hendrikus and Cornelia had been ardent respondents, writing to their family twice a week as they traveled Asia. But for the past 6 weeks, the family had heard nothing from them. This seemed peculiar to Herman, so he decided to investigate. But the police saw this as a waste of time, as just weeks prior, two charred bodies had been found on the roadside about 80 kilometers north of Bangkok. These bodies had initially been reported as a pair of missing Australian backpackers until the couple turned up alive. From this, all Nippenburg saw was a possible lead in his hands. There were two unclaimed charred bodies. Were they Hendrikus and Cornelia? Lo and behold, they were. Let us understand how they ended up here. Well, they were on the hippie trail, tired of their lives back home, and just needing some respite. In Hong Kong, they had the misfortune of meeting a wealthy gem dealer named Alain Gautier, who was none other than our very own Charles Sobhraj. Alain was an alias Charles maintained for a long time. He knew exactly what was a drawing force for a specific person. For this couple, it was the fact that Hendrikus wanted to propose to Cornelia, but all the wedding rings he could find in Hong Kong were out of his price range. Charles offered them a sapphire ring from his collection for half the market rate and had officially won over their trust. The couple had informed the brother-in-law who reported them missing that they would be going to Bangkok next. According to passport records, they had arrived at Bangkok but never checked into their hotel. In their letters back home, they had mentioned meeting a kind gem dealer in Hong Kong and that they would be staying at his house in Bangkok, the infamous Kanith House. That being their last known location, Nippenburg made sure the search started there. Before we follow Nippenburg on this adventure, let's learn about the pattern he had just discovered. Others had already been going missing, and bodies had been turning up prior to this, and others would continue to do so. The prior victims were Teresa Knowlton, Vitaly Hakim, and his wife, Charmaine Carew. Teresa was on her path to self-discovery, ended up making the fatal decision to spend one night partying with a big group of friends at a wealthy gem dealer and his wife's house in Bangkok, and was never seen alive again. I say alive because her body was found shortly after the fact. Her body was found floating in the Gulf of Thailand wearing a floral bikini. She had been sedated with a drug called largactil and then drowned while she was alive, which we know due to the presence of water in her lungs. Everyone titled her murderer the Bikini Killer. Then we moved to Vitaly Hakim. Vitaly Hakim was a Turkish drug seller. I think we all get the idea of the hippie trail, hence drugs are a massive part of this hippie culture. When Hakim got to Bangkok, he wrote to his wife that he had befriended a gem dealer, and then she never heard from him again. Charmaine left behind their young daughter to go look for Hakim after he did not return after the stipulated few weeks. Charmaine met Alain and his wife Monique, asked if they knew where Hakim was. They couldn't give her any concrete aid in her search. All they could do was be a good friend to her in her time of need. Weeks after both of their disappearances, Vitali's body was found burnt and charred on a road in Pattaya, and Charmaine was found in the same spot and condition as Teresa in the Gulf of Thailand. The Kanith house was almost a Bermuda Triangle for European travelers. The Kanith house, Alain Gautier, and Monique. I sure hope you've gotten comfortable with these names because they were the bane of all of these people's existences. I've stated these cases to you on a silver platter, but this information did not come so readily to our investigators. The major reason for these cases to not be strung together is the fact that no one knew these people were dead, as their passports were still active. Not only their passports, but their traveler's checks were being cashed in. A traveler's check is a check which you get from your country before you leave and then collect money from the country you're traveling to's embassy in the local currency. Now you must be wondering, wouldn't there be a system to verify the identity of the person collecting the traveler's check? But even passports would fail here. I need you to understand that back in the 1970s, passports were not as sophisticated as they are now. They did not have as many safety checks, and the documents were flimsy at best. The biggest cause of fraud was that people were able to cut out the picture from the passport and simply replace it. The missing piece to this puzzle for Nippenberg to be able to connect the dots was the neighbors of the Kanith house, Nadine and Remy Yirez. They were good friends with Alain and Monique and said that she was almost like a shadow and oppressed by Alain. Due to Remy's long work hours as a chef, Nadine spent a lot of time in the Kanith house and became good friends with not only Alain and Monique but also Alain's right-hand man Ajay Chaudhary and a house help called Dominique. Throughout the time that Nadine knew Dominique, he was never in perfect health. He had ended up in the Kanith house similar to the other victims. However, whenever he showed signs of poisoning, they would say that the doctors were incapable of fixing people. But when other patrons came by and exhibited similar poisoning symptoms, Alain and Ajay would immediately rush them to a hospital. Once, when Alain, Ajay, and Monique went traveling and left Dominique home alone, Nadine and Remy came to visit him. He asked for help to escape. Dominique said that the couple had taken his passport as soon as he had arrived. So Nadine decided to search their room for Dominique's passport. She found not only Dominique's passport, but also approximately 30 others. The difference, however, was that all the images had been replaced with either the face of Alain or that of Monique. They found Dominique's passport, but the picture was no longer that of Dominique. Nadine realized that Dominique's visa had expired, so after sticking on a picture of him, she forged a valid visa and bought him a flight back to France. This couple saved his life, helping him avoid ending up as another charred body on the road. As Herman's investigation was ramping up, he discussed it with the French diplomat friend of his, who immediately brought up the French woman who had come to the embassy claiming that her neighbor was a famous gem dealer whom she suspected of being a murderer. The French embassy was quick to dismiss her, but she had left behind a key piece of evidence, a diary belonging to Henricus and Cornelia, the two people Herman was trying to get justice for. They found the contact card for Alain and went to the house next door to meet Nadine. Nadine told him that she maintained her friendship with Alain and Monique in order to gather more evidence for the French embassy to believe her. Nadine and Nippenberg devised a plan to have Nadine sneak into the Kanith house and take pictures of all the damning evidence. Their plan was a success. Using Henricus and Cornelia's passports, the couple had gone to Nepal, where they befriended two people, killed them, and proceeded to steal their passports to re-enter Thailand under new identities. Their names were Connie Jo Bronzik and Laurent Carrier. After returning to Thailand, the couple planned to go to Europe, and Nadine knew that if they made it out of the continent, it would be very difficult to track them down. So Nippenberg got the police to arrest him and his associates. However, he had an American passport belonging to one of his many victims, with his own picture in it, making it possible for him to claim that he was not, in fact, a gem dealer in Bangkok, but instead just an American tourist. He was set free that very evening. While Herman and his wife were taking a much-needed break from this case, the Canadian embassy visited Monique's parents in Canada. They found out her name was not in fact Monique, but instead Marie-Andre Leclerc. Monique had eloped with her boyfriend to travel the world, and the only emergency contact they left behind was a phone number that was supposedly Alain's mother. When the embassy people reached out to her, they learned she was the mother of Charles Sobhraj. But the name Alain wasn't alien to her, as it was an alias she knew of back from Charles's criminal days, in his teenage years. I will dive deeper into this in the nurture episode of this case. He had a tumultuous early life, which is why he's a very important case study to understand nature versus nurture. I will dive into his past later, but now let's focus on how Monique or Marie-Andre ended up with Charles. In 1975, Charles met a Canadian woman named Marie-Andre, who at the time was dating someone else. He charmed her and she eventually fell in love with him, leaving her boyfriend behind. Soon after, Charles asked her to leave Canada and move to Bangkok with him. In Bangkok, Charles gave her a new identity, Monique. Monique was aware of his crimes and of his deceit, but she chose not to speak up. In her personal diary, she wrote about the deep conflict she felt between being Marie-Andre and Monique. Marie-Andre was an innocent young woman who had crossed the world for love. Monique was an accomplice to all sorts of illicit activities. If there was one person who had the power to stop the mayhem Charles could cause before it went too far, it was Marie-Andre. But Marie-Andre was long gone, and Monique was unwilling to speak up. The Canadian embassy recounted all of these stories back to Herman. This intense involvement in this case caused immense strain on Nippenberg's personal life, causing him to take this break. But this news brought him right back into the case. He met Nadine to get updates and was told the new developments were that Ala and Monique had fled, but days prior to their abscondment, they were no longer accompanied by their right-hand man, Ajay. Ajay was never seen or heard from ever again, nor was his body ever found. This is up to speculation, but I think we can all agree that Charles likely just removed a liability out of his path. Now, upon Ala and Monique's escaping, the owner of the Kanith house planned to throw away all their belongings and rent the house out to new tenants. This would destroy any evidence that could be used to keep Ala behind bars. Nippenberg contacted many high-level officials to allow a thorough sweep of the house. They found 5 kgs of medicine inside the house, 3 industrial-sized cartons of liquid containing a drug that acted as a laxative and a sedative. They also found Cornelia's belongings in that house. Nippenberg now went to the press. The immense media coverage and outreach put pressure on the Thai government to release an Interpol notice. Charles' modus operandi was to escape to another new country after every brutal crime he committed, under a new false identity. But the Interpol notice meant he was sought after in every country. He decided India would be a safe bet. However, he did not lie low in India. Instead, he continued his killing spree. He poisoned a French tourist called Luc Solomon. in a Mumbai hotel and killed an Israeli man called Alan Jacob. Then, in July of 1976, he was arrested in India after trying to drug a group of more than 30 French tourists in a hotel in New Delhi. Monique was arrested as an accomplice but feigned ignorance and claimed she knew nothing about the murders. He was held in the Tihar jail in New Delhi, which is the largest jail in South Asia, and is known for housing high-profile inmates. Although, I must tell you, he had the guards wrapped around his fingers and had all sorts of privileges, such as a TV in his cell, because he provided inside information to the police in return for these luxuries. Monique was later released in 1983 due to her being diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she was shipped off to Canada, where she died the following year. When his sentence was almost up, 10 years later, Charles threw a huge party to celebrate his 42nd birthday, distributed sweets laced with sedatives, and gave them to the prison guards. This caused a dozen inmates to escape alongside him. Now, I can hear you wondering, why would he do that if he was going to be let out soon enough? Well, this is because he wanted an extended sentence. If he were to return to Thailand, where murder is punishable by death, he would be killed. But if he got his Indian sentence increased by running away and getting caught, the statute of limitations on his Thai murders would expire, allowing him to then walk out a free man. The statute of limitations in Thailand is 20 years. He was celebrating his birthday in Goa when he was arrested. He did not resist. Instead, he went rather agreeably. On 17th February 1997, when Charles was 52 years old, he was released as a free man. Since the statute of limitations had run out everywhere, there was no country to extradite him to. So he was sent to France. He lived a gorgeous life and sold the rights to a movie on him for $15 million. This life, however, was boring for Charles. Charles was a thrill seeker, and the thrill of being chased is one he loved. So, in 2003, he went back to the one country he could still be arrested in, Nepal, which has no statute of limitations for serious offenses. He went under the pretense to set up a mineral water business and was spotted by journalists who followed him to a casino where he was arrested. He was arrested for the double murder case of Connie Jo Bronzik and Laurent Carrière from 1975. The true number of his victims is still unknown. There were 12 confirmed cases, but police estimate at least 30. He had originally confessed to 10 murders, but he has slowly redacted those over the years. In an interview, however, the following interaction occurred.
What you would do is pick a person or a couple, drug them.
Yeah, that's correct.
Take their passport and any valuables they might have and move on.
That's correct.
How many times do you think you did that?
I did so many times as I've had.
20? 120?
Maybe 100.
So take whatever I say about the number of victims with a grain of salt. I'm sure the biggest question on your mind is why? What was the motive? The whole point of this podcast is that no crime is committed without a motive, is it not? MindXMotive, hello! I will dive into that in our next episode on the nature or the mind behind the criminal. As of now, Charles completed his sentence in Nepal and has been a free man since 2022. He was released after his sentence of nearly 20 years. He was transferred to France to undergo an open-heart surgery and was released in accordance with the Nepalese law, allowing the release of bedridden inmates who have served at least 3/4 of their sentence. What twisted him into the serpent he became? What made him believe that manipulation and murder were his birthright? In our next episode, we'll unravel the psychology behind the serpent, the nature versus nurture battle that defined him. This is MindXMotive, and I'm your host, Raya. Thank you for tuning in and see you soon on the next episode. Just remember, at the end of the day, when the act is over, the mind remains.